Ladies and Germans, how you all doing? This is Con Over coming to you with another first look over here at Steel Division Normandy 44's Second Wave DLC Division Review. Now, I've already put up a video looking at the 1st SSB Commando Brigade, and you haven't checked that out, I advise you do so. At the same time, though, I'm going to give you guys a look now at the 9th Panzer Division. So the 9th Panzer Division was a unit that was seeing a lot of action over on the Eastern Front and got mauled very, very badly, as so many divisions were. Now, being moved back over here to the Western Front, it arrived in Normandy just in time to be almost completely destroyed in the Falaise Pocket. By the late August 1944, the strength that it had was about 1,500 men in one infantry battalion, one artillery battalion, and 5 tanks. Now, looking at the battle group itself inside the context of SD44, you wouldn't be able to know that. Indeed, you would see this and just see, oh my god, look at all those freaking vehicles. And that would be definitely a very justifiable call. The 9th Panzer Division, in the context of this game, is a very versatile unit. Not really successful in too many things, but at the same time, not really weak in too many areas either. Now, in terms of just raw, in terms of point value, 85, 125, 125 will be how you progress from A, B, and C phases, with that early jump in Phase B, giving you a lot of, I would say, econability, if that's even remotely a word. But before I let's talk about the virtues of this particular division or the shortcomings, let's take a quick look at what each area might be bringing to us. So in terms of Phase A, you do finally get yourself hands on the Panzer 1. Now this thing, it just has a couple machine guns. It's super, super light, but it's very, very quick. So it's nice, good shoot and scoot kind of visibility moving forward throughout most of the battlefields. And of course, you can bring yourself in some SPA troops, especially later on with those half tracks, giving you a little bit of fire support, which is always kind of nice, but nothing too sterling there. Now, in terms of infantry, we have some rather skillful opportunities here. You do have the standard kind of Panzergrenadier Führers, Panzergrenadiers, and you do have a good number of them early on in the game, and indeed you do even have Phase A Sturm Pioneers, which will give you a good amount of firepower up close if you can get there. What's more, with all the P-grants, you can expect to have an awful lot of anti-tank weaponry, and indeed I think we have a Panzerfaust Sechsig here, which gives you range up to about 150 meters, which is pretty darn good, easily the equal of any of the infantry-based AT on the Allied side. There's not any kind of real massive standouts, I would say, from the German infantry until you get to later on in the game, which is to say, while the early guys do just have no veterancy whatsoever, in B phase, well, you're going to get some. And in C phase, heck, oh my gosh, you get some more. So it's really kind of nice to see how your troops don't fall off, as a lot of German divisions do, where your late Phase B and early Phase C troops don't have that kind of combat ability to stand up to your opponents of similar strength. But it's a Panzer Division, so let's take a look at what the tanks actually can be brought into the field. So you do have a couple different versions of the Lukes here. Panzer II, more accurately. One, you can bring in a vetted up version of the P2, and this gives you a autocannon, which is pretty darn nice. But at the same time, if you compare it to the Panzer II Lukes, you give away the veterancy, but you can bring on in a little bit more armor, and a little bit more speed, and a little bit more firepower. So it's really, it's a taste call if you want to go that way or another. Phase B is where the 9th really starts to kind of come into its own. Lots and lots of P4s. Whether that's P4Js or P4Hs with veterancy, or even the P4Hs just in terms of cards overall. You sacrifice some veterancy here. There's a large number of vehicles that can be called on in from the Germans, and with these Panzer IV-Js being 125, you can bring in an absolute ridiculous amount of them, basically 1 per minute throughout Phase B. Now, of course, the trade-off is that the Panzer IVs only have 8 armor, and indeed that's going to be a kind of standard narrative throughout most of the tanks for the 9th Panzer. You can see not even until Phase C do you get anything that has more than that, and that does give you the dreaded Tiger. Now, if you can afford getting him out there, and it's going to take you almost 2 minutes worth of requisition, you do get that wonderful, wonderful 88mm cannon on it, as well as 3 machine guns, and that 1200 meter range is nothing to sneeze at either. But really, the consistent message of the 9th throughout pretty much all of its tanks is that they're under-armored, but they're kind of just the standard MBTs for the Germans until the late game, when you can bring in the giant metal kitty cats. Being the 9th Panzer, you would think you'd have a lot of kind of vehicle-based anti-tank weaponry, and that's sort of true. I mean, you can see here, in this particular deck that I have put together here, we have 2 Martyr 3s, and these guys are excellent at range. Of course, they have paper-thin armor, but at 1,200 meter range, you can engage most early tanks very, very well and pen them. If that's not really your thing, you can go for the door knockers, the Pack 38s, and you have a lot of opportunities to pick them up throughout both Phase A and Phase B. And if you prefer not to go for that, though, you do pick up Pack 40 starting in Phase B, going over into Phase C, as well as that dreaded kind of Jagdpanzer down at the end of the line. And this guy, well, he's basically more than enough, can stand up to pretty much anything the Allies can throw at him. So a very well-rounded, I would say, a nice mix of vehicle and anti-tank positions in terms of guns. You can also bring in a couple of Panzerschrecks as well. But this does limit you to having a 250 meter engagement range, and just 2 guys here. They get picked off rather quickly, and that's, of course, not an ideal. Now, anti-air, and this is where another new vehicle, another new weapon or two comes on in. You do have the 251s over here, and this has the 20mm cannon on the back of it. There's also an opportunity to bring on in this half-track with basically what amounts to a quad mount 20mm cannon. But Phase B is where things get really kind of interesting when you see this Flak 36. Now this guy, 160 rounds of ammunition, and he fires 92 of them a minute. This puts up at a ridiculous amount of firepower against any kind of aircraft coming on in, and with the HE that it puts out, it's rather hefty. It's rather hefty. It's a very, very good platform for pushing back pretty much anything you have to worry about from the Allies. Now, of course, the trade-off is that there's only minimum amounts of HE, and you, of course, have to make sure that they're kind of kept at range, but not too far from the battle space. It's a very kind of hard line to go between. Now, if you want to face, he does give you mobile wagons, which gives you a nice 37mm flak cannon. But perhaps more importantly than that, is you do see a couple of flak 41 88s that can be brought on in as well. So these things can be, of course, both deadly accurate at taking out Allied vehicles, but pushing back in Allied planes. And with a 2 stars worth of veterancy, while you're paying a premium to bring them on the field, they can be very, very potent weapons in the German arsenal. Artillery. We have what amounts to a decent amount of firepower early on, not so much anything in B, but you do have some good late-game firepower should you wish to go that particular direction. Now, the major call-out here for Phase A is that you'd have a 2-star veterancy mortar half-track, and this thing does an incredible amount of damage, but the veterancy speeding up the amount of barrages that it puts out does give you a very potent single-card weapon in your arsenal. Now, of course, Phase B, you can bring on in a Panzer IV, and some people will definitely do this, so that way they can also bring in another main battle tank. But again, after you fire off the artillery barrages, which are good, but just not perhaps stellar, all you have is just another P4, and you're paying an awful lot more to bring this guy on in. Now, late game, you have the opportunity to bring another one in if you really should wish it, but the main call-out is these Hummels at the end, both for 2-star veterancy or just regular 2,800 meters of range, outranging most anything that you would see from the Allies' side of the map. Now, air power at the end of it. So, air power. You have your very standard Storch. You have, well, what really amounts to a kind of standard German air kind of loadout. Many players will probably not really invest into anything until Phase B and C, preferring to use their tanks and infantry to kind of push on forwards, but there is an opportunity to bring in rockets, as well as some good bombs here for here, as well as the single 500 kilogram bomb here. And this is just, again, very standard Focke-Wulfs, the A8s, very good speed, or at least fairly decent speed, very good armament, good optics, good way to just kind of engage ground targets, as well as mixing it up in furballs in the sky. And that's pretty much it. I mean, the 9th Panzer Division, like I said, is versatile, but at the same time not stellar in any particular thing. Their Panzer IVs do mean that they will be outshot quite a bit by later Allied tanks, but the late game Tigas might be more than enough to kind of push that back in turn. At the same time, the infantry ground game might be a little weak earlier on in terms of veterancy or not. But if you can survive to the later game, having vetted up late game Pigrens, Pioneers, and otherwise would give you a very, very good advantage. Now, obviously, the 9th Panzer is going to be strong against a lot of infantry-based decks. Maybe not so many of those that have some very viable Phase A and B anti-tank, but in terms of the new divisions, at least, they will beat up on groups, especially like the Commando Brigade or the 6th Airborne, hammering the lighter divisions with relative ease. They will struggle against kind of completely mechanized forces, though, from the Allies, such as the 4th Armored. Regardless, if you have any thoughts about the deck I have put together here, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any thoughts about the decks overall, as well as maybe what the second wave DLC might mean for you as a player, please let me know. I'm more than happy to have some constructive conversations down here. Folks, thank you so much for tuning on in. This has been the 9th Panzer Division. I am Con Ulrich, and I'll see you guys all soon. Have a great day.